Hi, this is a quick video because I see a lot of people talking about virtual backgrounds on Zoom and the fact they don't find they work very well or they find them distracting. Now, I have deliberately set this up. If you used to see my videos, you'll know they don't normally look like this. But I just wanted to illustrate the kind of problems that people normally get. And as you can see, I've kind of got a clock growing out the top of my head, or bits of a clock anyway. Is if I move my hands, they're appearing and disappearing, and you're seeing bits of the background behind me. And the audio that you're listening to as well is just coming in through the laptop microphone. The audio, I know when I do that, isn't great, so I'm just going to switch over and we're going to fix these problems one thing at a time so you can see how you can fix it for yourself. So the first thing we're going to fix is the audio. Okay, so we've fixed the audio, so you should be able to hear me clearly, and the rest of this video should be more pleasant to listen to. Again, I always say people will tolerate slightly iffy video, not this iffy, this really looks quite poor, but if your audio is bad, they will just stop listening very, very quickly. So just to explain what's going on here and why you can see all this artifacting and you can see bits of the chair behind me, even though I'm meant to be sitting on a sunny beach somewhere. So first of all, I'm using my laptop's built-in webcam. They tend to be very small. The optics on them tend not to be all that great. The sensor is very small as well. And even though this is a relatively up-to-date HP EliteBook, it is an HD webcam. So as I've said on a previous video, it's by no means a crappy webcam, but it struggles with this. But what's really causing the problem here is that I've got, if I sort of wave my hand up here, you might be able to see it. I've got a lamp on behind me, so the background behind me is actually quite bright. So there's not very much lighting on my face. So the contrast, the amount of light contrast, if you like, between me and the background is not very good. So the software is trying to pick out what's me and what's the background. Now, to the human eye, to the human brain, it's blindingly obvious what's a human being and what's the background. Computers aren't that smart. AI is getting a lot better, but the software detection of this, when you have lots of different colors and objects and it's a clustered background and the lighting's not great, it struggles. It's a miracle it actually works as well as it does. So first thing that we are going to do is just switch over to my external webcam. Now, I'm on my external webcam. You've still got the problem with the artifacting though, because it's still the same software. It's still Zoom trying to pick me out from the background. The quality of the image of me will have improved, and we will go back to the laptop webcam because all of the stuff that I'm about to talk about applies regardless of whether you're using your built-in webcam or whether you are using an external webcam like the one that I do. And all of the kits, so the webcam and the headset that I use, I'll drop some links in so that you know what the kit is if you want to go out and get that as well. But we still have the same issue with lighting. So there's too much light behind me. There's not enough contrast between me and my background, which is why you're still seeing bits popping through. Now, because I've got an external webcam, it's got a slightly better job because the quality of image that Zoom is receiving to help pick me out from the background is that much more detailed. There's that much more resolution in it, but it really is still struggling. So all I'm going to do now is turn the light off behind me. So I've turned the light off behind me. Now the webcam, and again, I'm using my external webcam, but it would apply for the laptop camera as well. It's now looking at the light level that's on me. Now, as you can see, as I move here, it's still picking up the fact that I'm sitting in a seat. My hands disappear less because there's more of a contrast between the foreground and the background, but you can still see that artifacting and being able to see the background behind and around me. So next thing we're going to do is going to add some more light onto me. I've now added some additional light, but again, we've still got that clock occasionally appearing above my head. Again, there's going to be a limit to what you can do. If your background is cluttered behind you, it is going to struggle. If it picks up light, and here it's probably because it's reflecting off the clock, you're going to get this kind of artifacting. Lighting helps, the level of contrast to your background helps. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to move position. Okay, I've moved position in the room, so I'm still in my lounge, but I've moved to having what's a relatively plain wall behind me. If I turn the background off, so that's what I've got behind me. So there's still objects behind me, but there's nothing sort of quite as shiny or as obvious for the software to pick up. We're back to there. So now if I move my hands, you don't see the seat because I'm no longer sitting on one of my big armchairs, like the three-piece suite chairs. I'm actually sitting on a dining chair. So again, there's nothing too close behind me to then pick up. So when I do this, you're still seeing that artifacting. You're never going to get rid of that completely if you don't have a green screen. But it does mean that you're not seeing the chair behind me, and it is becoming a little bit better. The light that I've got on is actually the ring light. And I will just say, by the way, if you're watching this far through, this is not a great camera angle either. I've got my laptop down on my knee. Because I'm using the external webcam, the camera's a little bit higher, but I'm still sort of looking down on you. And if you are doing video calls like this is not a great angle for you because people can see under your chin and up your nose and everything else. It also feels that you're kind of looming over the person that you're talking to. So we'll fix that in a moment as well. I always say, get the camera up to eye level. But you're starting to see a little bit better in terms of that. But again, if you've got anything like that, and I can create the effect, as soon as I do that, where it thinks that my hands and my head are all part of the same object, part of the same foreground, it doesn't cut out what's between them. So you see the background. That's all it is. It's just trying to figure out where the edges are of you in the foreground, and it then sort of cuts that out of what's in the background. But if it can't do that, then it ends up creating that. And again, if you are finding that your face or your clothing or whatever is becoming part of the background as well, it all goes back to the same issue. There's not enough light, there's not enough contrast between you and the background. So if you're turning this on that's quite dim in your room, particularly it's an evening, you've got the curtains shut, you've just got some maybe one room light on or something like that, that's what's causing the problems. I say I'm astonished this works as well as it does in a lot of circumstances, but you need a well-lit room, you need a good clean background, and then you can get a reasonable result using the virtual background function in Zoom without the green screen. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and sit in front of my green screen with the normal lighting that I would use in there, with the camera at the level that I would normally use, and you can see the difference. And I'll just keep everything else the same and the background. Now I'm sitting in my dining room. I have got, if for those of you who've watched my other videos, I have got my green screen sheet behind me, but I haven't ticked the box that says I have a green screen in Zoom. I'm in my dining room. It is currently just coming up on 7:45. We are just getting up towards the end of April, so it's light outside, but it's not all that bright in here. The sun's actually around the other side of the house, and all I've got on is just a single room light above me. But you can see the fact that I am now very well lit. I've also got the camera at much more of an eye level. It's still slightly below eye level, but it doesn't feel like I'm kind of looming over you now. But you can still see a bit of the background behind me. You can see the green screen that I've got because I haven't ticked the I have a green screen option. I'm just using the software detection for the virtual background. So I'm now going to tick that option. Now I've ticked that option and you can immediately see that I have an issue. Although I have my green screen sheet behind me and where that green screen is hanging, now much less in the way of artifacts. You'll see a little bit of green haloing around my fingers, but we've got a problem here because the camera can see the wall where there isn't a green screen. So it works very well provided your green screen fills the field of view of your camera, but it becomes very obvious if your camera you're not quite at the right angle. So if I try and just pivot this round a little bit, I can get it centralized, but I've now got these bits of wall either side. So what I'm going to do is just launch the software that comes with my external webcam, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit to get rid of that. Obviously, if you're using an internal webcam, then you should be able to get into the camera controls. Again, every laptop is different, but you should be able to find camera controls somewhere that will allow you to control the zoom level. Obviously, if possible, if you've got a green screen, just make sure it's wide enough to cover it. Just before actually I switch to zooming that image in a bit, I'm going to switch back to my laptop camera, the built-in webcam with this, and just compare the quality. Okay, now this is exactly the same setting as you saw just a second ago, but this is using the built-in webcam, and you can immediately see, I'm not as good a quality image, and also it is really struggling, even with the green screen. You're seeing a lot of this sort of dottiness. Um, so that really is not working well. I'm actually quite surprised it's as bad as that. So even with a green screen, if you're using your built-in laptop webcam, you may still not get a great result. Now I've zoomed in the view on my external webcam a little bit, and that edge has almost disappeared. There we go. There's just a little bit sneaking in up there. So just pivoted the laptop around a little bit. What might not be immediately obvious, so you may not have noticed, is I've got some elements here which are interfering. What's causing that is that the green screen sheet that I have is actually hung in front of some glass doors. There's lighting on in the lounge, so there's light bleeding through the green screen. Obviously, again, if you've got any of that, it's going to interfere with the effect. My wife will be sitting in the lounge watching TV, so I don't want to go in there and shut the curtains and turn the lights off, which would fix the problem. And obviously, if you could hang a green screen sheet in front of a wall, that would work a lot better as well. But you can now see I'm well lit. The effect is much more convincing because I've now got that green screen rather than just relying on the software picking me out from the background when it's, you know, a magnolia colored wall and you've got different objects in the background. Software has a much easier job of picking you out because the background is green. As we saw just a moment ago, though, if you are using your laptop webcam, even that may not actually fix the problem. You may still be getting some weird artifacting and spotting on it. The very final thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my LED panel light just to give me a little bit more of a feel. To be honest, it's really not necessary looking at the lighting on this. If I was doing a call with somebody or recording a video, certainly, again, bear in mind, this is being recorded directly in Zoom. I'm not using any post-processing or anything to create these effects. This is literally what Zoom does out of the box using those virtual backgrounds, and now I've added the green screen. But I'm going to turn that external light on and we'll just see what difference that makes. I've now turned my external LED panel light on just to give me a little bit of extra lighting. To be honest, the level that I've got it at the moment is just providing a little bit of fill, just removing some of the shadows. What I did notice when I first turned it on, I'm going to demonstrate this in a second, is if I turn it up too bright, that actually creates problems of its own. So this is the external light turned up a lot more now. Currently, this is effectively in its daylight color setting. So it's quite bright. It is creating some shadows on my face, but what you'll also start to notice as I was moving around is it's creating some much more of an edge, because what's happening is the light that's coming towards me is also hitting the green screen behind me. And you remember the problem that we had when there was too much light behind me without using the green screen? It's causing the same problem. It's actually now starting to think that part of the green screen behind me is actually part of the background. You can see some glitching here down here as well, down there. And you can also see what looks like I've had an outline drawn around me. This is because the light is bouncing off the green screen and coming onto me. And again, it's creating this weird effect. So I'm going to just dial that light back down a little bit, and hopefully this sharp edge and this blurriness down here should disappear. Okay, so I've dialed the light back down. Still got a little bit of this edging, but the sort of speckling, if you like, that I was seeing down this side has now disappeared. To be honest, this is probably about as good as it gets. The Other thing that really helps is actually which virtual background you choose. Now, for green screen effects generally to look convincing, the lighting that is on you should look like the way the scene behind you is lit, and especially if it's video. But the same thing applies to a like just a static scene as well. So I'm going to now switch to the background that I normally use for virtual backgrounds. I just wanted to use this because it's sunny and everything makes me think I'm on the beach and it's a bit of fun. But we're going to switch to my normal background and you'll see, and I'll explain the reason why I use that one. This is my normal virtual background. It's a free image I originally picked up, but I have added my logo to the top of it. And actually, because of where that logo is, it now makes that bleed through of light from the other room that I was talking about a little bit more obvious. I'm just going to leave that in here for the purposes of this video. I know exactly how to fix it. I've told you guys how to fix it. Make sure you either put it against a wall, make it a lot better, or if you do have to hang it in front of glass doors, make sure you've got no light bleeding through from the other side. It's a simple enough fix. But if you sort of ignore that bit there, then as you can see, the lighting that is in this particular background image looks like I'm indoor. It's all tungsten bulbs. It's quite yellowy. Very often when I'm sitting inside, I've got a room light on or something like that. So the color temperature of the light that's on me and the intensity of the light that's on me is very similar to the lighting that's actually in the scene behind me. And that's what tricks the brain into thinking that what you're seeing, the combination of the real foreground and the virtual background, is actually more consistent. Now, it doesn't help if you've got things like that, but if you imagine that bit's not there, then you actually have something that's quite convincing. And if you have a look on some of my other videos, you'll see what that looks like. But to say, even with green screen, you still get that little bit of green haloing, that little bit of green edging. But because now my background isn't quite so bright, then the edge that's on there, it's still there, but because the background is a little bit more muted, that is less noticeable. And it's just little things like this, little adjustments that you make when you do it, that creates a more convincing an effect and actually ends up having a virtual background that works really well. So if you can get a green screen, then use it. And I know you can get very expensive ones that are hundreds of pounds, but there are lots of different options on Amazon or your supplier of choice. As I've said before, the green screen sheet that I have is just a really cheap £10 piece of cloth off Amazon, piece of doweling, a piece of wood, threw it from a local DIY store and a couple of command hooks stuck to the wall. It's cloth, it's creased, it's dusty, it's really not an ideal green screen. But even with such a cheap, I'm going to say substandard, really, in terms of professional quality, but even with such a cheap setup, that bit aside, um, it actually creates a really convincing effect. I hope that's been helpful. I hope it's explained to you why, if you are struggling with virtual backgrounds, why you're struggling with them and the kind of things that you can do to fix it. So don't sit in sofas or chairs, or big chairs where it's close to you in the foreground, because otherwise when you do this, you will see the chair behind you. Sit on a dining chair or something like that. Create separation from you and your background. Good lighting on you, not too much lighting on what's behind you. Having a background that isn't too cluttered, again, that really helps. Using an external webcam if you can get one, and I know they're really quite difficult to get hold of at the moment. Everybody wants an external webcam, but the investment is worth it. The image quality is worth it, and the flexibility it gives you in terms of camera placement, and I'll probably talk about that on a different video, is worth it. But say, even if you've just got your external webcam, good lighting, separate yourself physically from your background, um, and separate yourself in terms of contrast and lighting, and you should go a long way to making your virtual backgrounds work better. I hope that's been useful. If it has, please do consider sponsoring me with a coffee or three. I'll drop the link to that in the video below, and I'll probably put a little panel up as well if you are watching this on YouTube. Have fun, enjoy the rest of your evening, day, whatever time it is that you're watching this, and I will see you on the next video.